Hi, everyone. My name is Boris Kievsky. I am a nonprofit consultant with backgrounds in technology and in storytelling. I have a very split personality that I combine to help nonprofits tell their best stories online so that they could reach more of the audience that they need to find and get them to take the actions they need to create a greater impact on the world. I am your host and panel moderator for this afternoon, and I'm very excited with this amazing group that we've got here today. As they introduce themselves, I'd like every one of them to also say what the greatest thing they're seeing out there that nonprofits are facing today that we could perhaps talk to we will be talking to during this webinar, but also kind of just their own perspective. The biggest thing that I've been seeing is the need for balanced communication. We're all getting flooded with messaging right now, and nonprofits are concerned with how much is too much, how much is not enough, and how much do you ask for donations in the mix of all of that. And we'll definitely be talking about that later. Next, if you don't mind, Liz, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody from New York City. I'm Liz Ngonzi. I'm an international speaker, consultant, and coach, and I also teach at New York University Center for Global Affairs. I help nonprofit organizations to figure out how to tell their stories most effectively and engage with their supporters online. So what I'm seeing out there is that people are really struggling with effectively telling their stories online because there's so much noise right now. And so I'd say those organizations that can really step it up in that area are really going to be able to gain mind share, gain market share, and raise more funds.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. Amir, do you want to jump in next?
Sure. Amir Givon. I'm in Los Angeles, founder of Juicer, a crowdfunding platform that's also a nonprofit itself, helping Jewish and Israeli-related crowdfunding campaigns and causes raise money online. That's at least my nonprofit hat that I'm involved in. My background is in engineering. I guess the biggest thing that I'm noticing from questions, we work with every initiative from beginning to end on their campaign, and I noticed as soon as the storm started, people were just not sure how to incorporate it and how to adjust the story or what to raise money for right now, and that's what people are struggling with right now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isaac Shalev. I'm at Sage 70. We're a boutique consultancy that helps nonprofits do better with data. And I think the big thing that we're seeing right now is that everything has gotten slower, and that's wreaking havoc with existing projects and timelines. But it's even as you figure out how to communicate, and even as you figure out how to work in this new environment, everyone's figuring it out at different speeds. And so our coordinated work is slowing down quite a lot, and it's putting a lot of stress on effective project management and communication.
Very, very true, and I'm seeing a lot of that as well. Marion, you want to introduce yourself?
One sec. Hi, I'm Marion Stern. I'm the principal for Projects and Philanthropy. We provide consulting services in fundraising, strategic planning, and board governance issues. What I'm seeing is that the first week that all this occurred, the immediate rush was to figure out what organizations were going to do with their spring galas. Most organizations had something planned over the next several months. So there was the rush to figure that out. And then now I'm seeing that nonprofits are really trying to figure out the best way to conduct donor engagement and also how to set priorities. So who are you going after for what element of your mission, and how do you really handle your workload given what's been thrown at you over the past couple of weeks?
Awesome, and we apologize to all of you watching. Marion is having some internet issues. She's doing her best, and she's still going to be offering a lot of great insights and advice, but just bear with us because the entire world is facing new realities with internet, and so connectivity is an issue for all of us. Tracy, do you want to come in next?
Sure. My name is Tracy Kaufman. I am programs manager with Candid, the organization created out of Foundation Center and GuideStar as of last year. We are the primary source of research and data on foundations, grants, and philanthropy worldwide. So I'll be talking about the foundation funding perspective on the crisis right now. And if there's one thing I have noticed that nonprofits are facing right away, it is a sudden and dramatic loss of revenue. So I'll talk a little bit about the foundation response to that.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. So the poll is coming in. We have most of the people have voted already. If anyone wants to vote, I'm going to leave it open for another couple of seconds, and then we're going to dive into all of the areas of content that we really want to focus on today, including fundraising, communications, how to serve your communities. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end polling now, and I'll share the results. And not that surprising, funding is the biggest challenge that a lot of organizations are worried about right now, followed by a tie between moving more fundraising online and balancing message between dire need and helping community. It's interesting, it's actually slightly different than we had earlier today when we did our first presentation, but absolutely valid, of course, and we're going to be covering a lot of this information as soon as we get into this. And then as far as how your audience and donors have responded to your needs, more people have not felt an impact yet than overall donations have dropped off, but it's an interesting balance, nearly the same. So let's go ahead and dive in, I guess, and let's start with communications. So with all the noise that's out there right now, how are nonprofits how should nonprofits really be communicating what's working and what's not working, guys?
Want me to take that, Boris?
Sure. Anyone who wants to can unmute themselves and dive on in.
So I'll go ahead and start. I think what we're seeing is there's a tremendous amount of noise, and I said this earlier to earlier group, that it's like Giving Tuesday all year long or all month long, right? So there's a tremendous amount of noise in your inbox, so via social media and so on and so forth. And so the struggle that nonprofits have that they're facing is how to differentiate themselves and how to create that signal within that noise. And I would also say that there are a lot of appeals, right? There are a lot of appeals, and then there are a lot of resources being shared. And I think that organizations that are able to figure out what it is that people are looking for and providing that kind of content or services, and also expressing gratitude and really checking up on their supporters, I think that's really what they need to be thinking about. I'll give an example of Unicef USA, an organization that has a fundraising office here in the US, but its operations are worldwide, typically has challenges with trying to, they're able to raise money, but they have to convince American donors that there's some kind of merit to raising funds for an organization that operations outside of the US. And what they've done is, because they have expertise around how to deal with kids, how to message kids about different issues, how to keep kids occupied in very challenging times, they've able to repackage their content to make it accessible to US parents. So whether it's games or just ways to talk to your kids about having to be home and so on and so forth. And so what they're doing is, not only are they helping their existing supporters, they're actually creating a new market for their services and making themselves relevant.
And we're definitely going to focus more on that later on as well, in terms of moving your programming online and growing your base. But in terms of the increased competition out there for attention, guys, what are you seeing in terms of people trying to break through that noise, trying to really hone their message? What are the keys to getting that message right to the audiences that these organizations really need to reach right now?
Yeah, so part of what I'm seeing is working with different initiatives, and the way that we work is that we help them craft their campaign. They go out there, start raising it online, and many times come back to us with questions of, this is working, this is not working. I get a lot of them lately coming and saying pretty much everything is not working. Which is a very clear indication that of that noise that is everywhere. but it also poses an opportunity to really, like in a laser-focused kind of way, be clear of your message, make it simple, and also overall, all the things that we all year long suggest to them, nowadays is the right time to make sure that you're best at it within your small corner of what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot, but it really comes back down to best practices. All the best practices that are important year round and are important under any circumstance right now are probably more important than at any other time. To use a phrase that I don't love using, it's that common, now more than ever approach to things. So now more than ever, the need to have your clear communication, to have your messaging dialed in terms of what you're offering out there and what you would like people to do on your behalf or along with you is critical. What I don't love seeing is actually people, so many emails have come in and saying, COVID-19, we're here to help. That's very broad, that's very general. It's not specific things that you're doing. It's not specific, even just in the subject line to, if you look at my inbox, and I'm sure many of yours right now, most of the titles in there are COVID-19, our response, we're here to help, whatever it is, rather than specifics. I don't know which one I should click on, which one is going to be most important to me. So honing that message, dialing in crystal clear as to what you want to say and what you want people to do is absolutely critical. And then the other phrase that I really don't like is now more than ever, because that seems to be a worn out phrase that, again, everyone is using. So make your case very specific.
And I'll add on to that, Boris, that a best practice that we should be especially on top of right now is segmentation. We can't be treating every person the same. We can't be messaging the same message to all of our constituents. We all have a constituency for whom our cause is number one for them as well. They're our closest constituents. They care, they volunteer, they're on our boards. And they're the ones whom we need to communicate with now, perhaps even more, and bring them in more closely and listen to them. And we want to message them differently than we message a broader audience who really their focus may not be on us now, and maybe that's appropriate that their focus is not on us right now. They may have some other organization or cause that they're most closely involved with and they're most closely connected with. So find the message for the people that you're closest to. Find that second message for that second ring of people, but don't forget this is also an opportunity to reach new people who may have never thought about how important the work that you do is, and maybe this is a new lens for them or a new frame for them. But yeah, I mean, the more COVID-19 you put in and the more now more than ever's you put in, the less you will break out from the crowd.
Right. Rising above the noise doesn't mean being part of the noise. It means defining a clear differentiator between you and everyone else. So speaking of differentiating and breaking out of the mass hysteria on many levels that's happening right now, let's move into fundraising and how people are currently asking for donations and how they should be perhaps asking for donations in order to really raise their fundraising right now. I've seen and spoken to many organizations that have been fortunate and have done the right strategic moves to actually increase their donations right now. They've seen whether it's their galas that have gone virtual or their communications ongoing. They've seen new donors and old donors rise up. So what are the keys to getting that kind of engagement with your current base? And maybe, and Marian, I'm gonna start with you here, maybe it starts with your own board.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Boris. I love that tee up because, I'm passionate about this subject. What I've been advising my clients and others with whom I've been working over the past several weeks is to start small and get bigger. So the message I feel is that your board is on board. So I have been, again, suggesting that immediately you speak with all your board members and have them make a gift to an emergency campaign or to cover the gala that's not happening, whatever platform you're using to raise money, so that when you go out to other donors, you can say that 100% of our board is helping us with this supplemental campaign. And the dollar amount, while important, is really less important than the fact that you have 100% participation. That allows then you or your board members, preferably your board members are also making calls as well, to then go to your major donors and say, please join us. You've been a loyal and large donor to us for many years. This is what our board has done. Now, please join us. And then that can filter down to even your larger database, which is the messages that people have come together to support us, to provide for our constituents. Please join us. We know that in fundraising, the words "please join me" are among the most effective that you can use. So that's what I've been suggesting that we do. One other thing on the communication, you may have seen I got dropped off for a few minutes during that part of the conversation. Some of the best communication I've seen is when the subject line, it talks about an extension of services. So for example, with the Social Services Agency, rather than saying what we're doing during COVID-19, they're saying 3 free support groups available tonight at 6, 9, and 11. Click here to join.
Absolutely, being specific, being clear. Yeah, we touched on that, but that is a perfect example of that. What about on the broader scale? So that's how to start with your board and sort of the top of the pyramid. What about on the broader scale when it comes down to your current smaller donor base and your potential growing base? Can anybody talk to? I see Amir unmuted himself.
Yeah, so I would say as simple as possible, connected to impact. And as you all were talking, I feel like there is a distinction between organizations that need money for their own survival as an organization versus organizations that are raising money in order to create more impact. And of course, every organization is a different story of whether more of one helps the other, and I'm not going to get into that. But the suggestion that I always give, no matter what, if there is an ask, and there should be an ask pretty much everywhere, it should always be next to the impact that this delivery of funds will create. So it's not please give us, that's it, versus give us so that we can do this and that, or give us so that this will happen, because that impact is what people will connect to. And that's kind of like should lead people in their ask and into campaigns and everything around that.
And I'd like to add to that as well. When you do have your normal annual campaigns, normally you'll ask people for an increase every year. Research has shown that donors in the level of about $1,000 to $2,500 are the most likely to increase their support if you ask them in the right way. So by tying it to impact, showing what you can do for them, very often donors don't even remember what they gave you the year before. So ask for that. It's true, right? I see you laughing. They don't. So ask for that marginal increase. A donor who gives $1,000 can very easily give $1,500. One who's giving $2,500 can very easily give $3,000. So ask for these marginal increases, and based on what Amir said, show how those marginal increases will increase your impact, that will make the difference.
What about the ongoing ask in terms of when you're sending out either your newsletters or on social media? What should we be doing in that ask? So absolutely related to your impact, related to the programming and the services that you're doing. But are there some best practices right now, for example, on social media, when you're putting out your content and you're putting out your services, whatever it might be, sharing them with the community? What's some best practices for then asking for something in response? Liz, Isaac, do either of you have something to offer on that front?
I think that this is just basic storytelling. Just the way that you frame your storytelling, I think, is we talked about this earlier, Boris, it's problem, solution, impact. You want to frame it that way and then ask, no matter how you're sharing your content. And I think it's really keeping it as simple as possible, making it really clear what it is you're sharing, you want them to do. But something that I want to also distinguish between is we talk about impact and they're also results. A lot of time we talk about impact as being the result, but it's impact is really the result of the result, right? So it's sort of like, as a result of us being able to help 50,000 more people to do X, this is what's going to happen. So I think we need to understand that, because that's actually what the donor is going to connect to when you then make the ask. That's how I would kind of focus on problem, solution, impact, ask.
Cool. Yeah. And in terms of the balance between putting out content and then also asking, something that I know is standard best practice, right? When you're putting stuff out, sorry, go ahead, Liz.
8 to 1.
8 to 1. Okay, that's a great one. I've heard 3 to 1. Whatever the range is, definitely you want to be putting out more, providing more value than you're asking in return. But also, wherever you're providing value, you want to give people the opportunity to pay you back for that value, even without you asking. And I have heard from organizations that without even trying, their online donations, their small donors have gone up and up, because they're seeing all the value that they're putting up, and it's easy. So remove any friction. Don't make me have to think about, oh, how do I donate? Should I donate? Do they need donations? If on wherever you're sharing your content, your website, your social media, wherever it might be, your email even, there's a clear donate button. If I see the value of the work that you're doing, whether it's for me personally or for my community that I care about, I'm much more likely to hit it if it's right there. So always provide value first, ask for donations second, or ask for support second, but always do both and make it as easy as possible.
Boris, sorry, just very quick point. That methodology is particularly useful with lapsed donors. We also know from research that most donors lapse either because you didn't ask or they just forgot to do it. It rarely is the case that they're unhappy that they contributed to you in the first place. So reaching out by segmenting, reaching out to those lapsed donors now with a compelling message, with impact, all the things we've been talking about, but doing a special segmented campaign towards them, I believe could bring back a lot of donors right now.
Yeah, they're in standard marketing. There's actually a standard campaign for that, to get customers back that have been missing from your store for, let's say, the last 3 months, because there's, after a certain point, if someone hasn't shopped on your online store, they're less likely to ever come back. So you send them out a little motivation. In terms of fundraising, that's absolutely a great point, because I've seen actually in one of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, somebody was saying, oh, we're going to send out a campaign for lapsed donors saying, what can we do to win you back? And I think that's the wrong question to ask. It feels very transactional, especially at this time. It feels very self-serving, instead of, hey, what can we do? What more can we do for the community? Can we make it easier for you to donate? Is there a reason why you decided or missed the last opportunity to donate to us? To really make it feel like you care about them, you care, which you should, and you care about their current situation. Because for some, it might be that, well, they're feeling their own financial hardships and they can't donate at the moment. You want to be sensitive to that. They may have other more pressing, in this case, medical emergencies going on in their own families. So you definitely want to have the tone of, we care about you as part of our community, because donors are a very important, major part of your community. And we want to make sure that you have everything you need so that you could also help us. In terms of, so that's a good, I think, coverage.
Boris, just a tiny thing, because we kind of like dove into the ask and all those things. The broader question was about communication out there and everything. And I just a point to make, and that is staying true to your brand. I see a lot of organizations, because there's a lot of trends going on now, because more people are home, more people are posting online, there's many more competitions and all sorts of things and challenges and all those kind of things, and trying to ride those waves. I still typically recommend, yes, if you want to ride those waves, do that, but stay to your brand, true to your brand. Even adjust messages or anything like that, so that it still connects to your mission, and not you just adding to the noise out there, hoping that you're going to grab a couple more eyeballs out there. Yeah.
We have actually a question before I move on. We have a question from Lorraine saying that their gala for large capital fundraising project was in January and resulted in a lot of pledges from hedge fund managers. With the recent stock market decline, what's the best way to communicate with them as June and September due dates approach? Isaac, you and I, well, we all have some co-working history here. I know that you actually talk about nurture campaigns and email campaigns. Do you want to jump in on that?
Sure. So I think first off that when we're talking about pledges that are related to the stock market, we first should have a little bit of confidence. And what I mean by that is that professional hedge fund managers who have made a pledge knew back in January when they made a pledge that it was going to come due, and had an array of tools available to them to hedge, to protect, to set aside. So, you know, we should have the confidence that even though there may have been a setback in the stock market, that our donors have prepared not just for their families, but also for their charitable obligations. And so we shouldn't be, I don't think that there should be any trepidation. What you do want to do is approach with sensitivity, right? So you do want to, first off, if anyone has reached out to you, respond to them and understand what the circumstances and so forth. But even if nobody has reached out to you, I think that if you have some specific concerns about large gifts that you're dependent on, this is a good time to be proactive and to say, look, we're assessing what our future looks like. We're trying to understand what cash flow will look like. We're trying to understand what we'll be able to support. Is this a gift that you're going to be able to make on time? Is this a gift that we need to consider modifying, and sort of having that conversation? What I do not recommend is sending out a mass email saying to people who have made pledges, hey, could you just let us know if everything is cool? I think that sends the wrong message. I think that creates an opportunity for people to wiggle. What I do think that is important to do is to continue to project confidence in the importance of your mission. What we do remains important today. It's more important today. It's in a time when lots of other causes are going to call on our attention. We need to be focused on our mission, the thing that we care most about. And so don't back off of that 1 inch. Be sensitive to folks who have needs, be available for the conversation, and plan thoughtfully.
Right on, Isaac. And the other aspect to this, I think, is, which you kind of alluded to already, is keeping the communication consistent, keeping them engaged so that it's not in 5 months or whatever it might be that you come to them and say, hey, remember that pledge you promised us? We really like it now. But if you are constantly showing them on a regular basis the value that you provide to your community at this time and at all times, and therefore the need and how you're going to be using, how you're already allocating the money raised from the gala, where it's going to go, and perhaps you're reallocating based on the new situation. I don't remember, Lorraine, if you said when your gala was. It was in January. So in January, perhaps this situation was not as prevalent in people's minds. And now that it is, you want to show that you are responding to the real needs right now, not whatever a year ago anyone thought might be the case. I hope that answers your question. So let's now move on actually to see how another area of fundraising is going and being affected right now. Tracy, you work with Candid. I know you guys do a lot with foundations specifically, and I know you've been communicating a lot about what organizations can do and should be doing. I'm going to ask you actually a two-part question. The first is, and other people can chime in on this, of course, as well. What are foundations doing right now? What is the foundation response? And the second, and I can remind you if you need, is what do they want to see from nonprofits right now? What should the storytelling be? What should the communications be out there to really help nonprofits secure any connections with foundations?
Great. So what's going on with foundations right now? Keep in mind Under normal circumstances, foundations are going to be an important but modest piece of your revenue streams as a whole. They usually comprise only like 18% of private contributions to nonprofits compared to like 68% is individual donors. That's the big piece. However, while foundations are going to be a little bit less significant during the good times, foundations are there for you in the bad times, like right now. So far, already more than $4 billion has gone out from foundations directly to the COVID-19 crisis. And there's two parts to the initiatives coming from foundations. There's the direct kind of disaster relief chunk. A lot of that is coming from corporate funders. If disaster relief sounds like it fits what you're dealing with right now, talk to corporate funders. They make up 77% of the foundation funding that's coming in for the crisis right now. If what you're dealing with is more just overall revenue shortfalls, you're just wondering about overall sustainability, community foundations are where it's at. When it comes to an economic crisis, which is also going along with the public health crisis, community foundations are always the first on the ground, the first to act. They give away the largest share of their assets in a given year during an economic downturn. More than a third of them have special initiatives set up just to fund issues such as this going on right now. And also they are more likely to do asset averaging. So one reason why foundations are going to be especially helpful for you right now, number one, is they're required by law to give out a certain amount. Individual donors have a choice. They can give or they can not give. So if things are economically a little unstable, the uncertainty can cause them to be shy with their wallets. Foundations are required by law to give out at least 5% of their assets each year. A lot of foundations are going to do asset averaging. At least a third of foundations do asset averaging, which means they give their 5% based on an average of their assets over the course of roughly 3 to 5 years, rather than just on the one most recent year. This means during the good times, they'll give maybe a little bit less than it seems like they should, but it means that during the hard times, right now, they're giving out noticeably more than you might think that they should. So foundations are gonna be giving out more, and they are giving out more. Candid already, we have a free pop-up site showing all of the funding coming out in response to the COVID-19 crisis. This is going to include the disaster relief stuff and the kind of economic response to help struggling nonprofits. And so that link is going to be shared around after this session is over. The second part of your question was what these funders want to see from grantees right now?
What is it that they're looking for? What is it that they're responding to at this time?
Well, some of it may come down to, are you talking to a current funder that has already been funding you, or are you approaching a totally new funder? With your current funders, make sure you're talking to them like people, because they are people. Talk to them honestly about your needs, about your budget shortfalls. They understand, because we're all working through this. If it looks like you're not going to meet your outcomes for this year, because some of us may not meet certain outcomes that we had promised to funders, be upfront with them about it so that they know what's coming and they'll understand. If certain things budget-wise are not fully on track, talk to them about that too. A lot more foundations are going to be willing to give unrestricted funding right now, general operating support funding, to help organizations a little bit better. And also talk to them more when you're not directly asking them for money. The more touch points you can have with a foundation that are not you asking for money, but are more just having a conversation human to human about what you're each dealing with and working on during this time, that's going to be helpful. But again, some things are similar to individual donors. Focus on the impact, focus on your mission, focus on what you're all about, what you do well, and make sure everything points with a laser focus on your impact and your commitment to achieving that impact no matter what.
Fantastic. Tracy, Kim asked if you do you not expect any contraction in foundation given in this massive global downturn? Won't they lose dollars in their funds?
Okay, so they will. Their endowments are going to go down. However, because so many of them practice asset averaging, that helps as a certain shock absorption during economic downturns like this. This means, so for instance, if we go back 10 years to the recession, overall during that time, foundation funding fell by only 2%. and then eventually it bounced back and grew bigger than ever before. Now, this is a different situation than the recession 10 years ago, but we can learn certain lessons from it. The fact that endowments dropped last time, like sometimes as much as 20%, but giving dropped only 2%, that's the power of asset averaging right there. They balance it out. They're giving an average of what our assets were over on average within the past 3 to 5 years. So giving doesn't drop based on a very sudden and sharp downturn in their endowments. So the giving, it might drop a little bit, but it'll be steadier than you might expect it to be.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. We have actually a question from Diana, which leads us very well into some of the next things that we want to talk about. Diana says that fundraising is a struggle for all nonprofits, but arts organizations, especially performance organizations, have a particularly difficult time. I see Marianne already smiling because I know she has some things to say about this. It's slightly easier to make people understand the importance of service organizations. Do we have advice for those? So let me first say, before Marianne even jumps on, that there is always an opportunity to pivot, and that's a lot of what we want to talk about. There's always an opportunity to get creative, to find ways to provide value, but arts is always valuable and always necessary. So even if it seems at the moment that everybody is focused on disaster relief, if we want to call the COVID-19 response that, it will shift back as the new normal adjusts. And so the goal is to position yourself at that point to be prepared to resume your business however it needs to look. Marianne, please jump on in.
Yeah, we had this conversation earlier today. I am thinking a lot about arts organizations because it is particularly difficult. And one of the things I've noticed that I've appreciated as an individual is that so many arts organizations are putting free content out there. I mean, I've really been enjoying all the musical performances and exhibits of museums and everything that have been free of charge. So I do worry about arts organizations. On the other hand, one of the things I have been recommending to my organizations is that while, of course, you want to stay true to your brand, true to your mission, and to utilize your consistent case for support, this is a good time to add a value proposition to that case for support. What are your needs, or what are the needs of your constituents, or what impact has the virus had on you specifically during these times? And by adding that to your regular case for support, it's not specifically COVID fundraising per se, but it is putting out there the specific needs that you have under these very unusual circumstances. And there will be donors who really appreciate what you're doing for them. Again, you're giving them content, you're improving their lives. So by expressing your particular need, I do think it will attract donors. And then Boris, you had some other examples of how by giving free content, now you can build subscriptions later on. So I'm going to toss it back to you.
Sure, and anyone else is welcome to chime in on this as well, of course. So I've seen a lot of organizations obviously are shifting their programming virtual, and that's something that we definitely want to talk about. By taking whatever resources you have and reallocating them to the digital space wherever possible. So I've seen arts organizations, of course, offer free content right now in terms of dance lessons, or in terms of even there's one organization that is now doing well, there's a lot actually doing living room concerts where their performers, their folks, just like if you look at some of the late night hosts right now, right? They're all doing it from their homes, and we're all tolerating it, even though Seth Meyers can't figure out how to stop being in echoey spaces. I'm still watching some of his stuff, right? We're not so much worried about the production values right now because we feel like we're all in this together. So it's really what's the most that you can do without overextending yourself, without worrying about not doing enough. So any programming, for example, live theater can easily be translated to live streaming theater, right? Dance can be converted as well. But it's also, by providing that content, you are not only going to see some of the same people that you've been reaching already, that are hopefully going to respond, but hopefully they're going to also share, because now all of a sudden there's a much greater demand as well for that type of content. I know I've got 3 kids at home, and we're always interested in things that are going to keep them interested, occupied, educated, and entertained. in any combination of those four things. So once you start building that base, you could also look to, and we want to talk about shifting your revenue models as well. Just as a teaser to that, there are platforms that you could utilize, even Patreon, I think that's still around, where people can donate and respond in kind for the value that you're providing to them. Some organizations are putting, for example, live theater organizations are putting some of their live performances behind a membership paywall, if you will. So it's easy enough to put up a subscription system on most websites these days, or use third-party systems like Teachable or Patreon or whatever it might be, so that your current members can access it already, and new potential members can pay to access it at any given time. I see some other people want to chime in, so please go on ahead, Isaac.
Yeah, I want to say two things. First is, particularly for arts organizations, performance organizations, you have one major advantage over many other organizations, which is that you have creators, and people want to be close to creators, and people want to feel connected to them. So I would encourage you to explore programming models that invite into the home, but it's not just, oh, if you have a great cellist, have them play the cello. People would love to hear the cello, but they'd love to see your kitchen. You know what I mean? There's an intimacy and an authenticity to sharing our personal spaces that we're all kind of doing right now. And so embrace that as a means of building deeper and better and stronger relationships. That's one. And definitely monetize some of those opportunities. And by the way, this is out there. Like, if you go out and look and see what comedians are doing, what drag performers, I think, are leading the way in this in some ways, and you should check that out, because they are bringing shows into these tiny spaces that they live in, and they are sharing something true about them that you might not have gotten to see otherwise, and they're offering you ways to contribute towards it without charging you a ticket. So those are some things to look at. Look at those two types of performers to see how they're working. The last point that I'll make is that when you think about what you should open up or what your business model should look like here, content that has no marginal cost for you, you should make free to attract more people into your. So look at HBO, they've unlocked a huge portion of their older shows for free. It doesn't cost them anything, and people who didn't get a chance before are now being exposed to that content. Content that does cost you, or that uses up a resource, a valuable resource, like the time of one of your performers, you should be finding a way to gate that or ask people for payment for that in a way that makes that worthwhile and that speaks to your core supporters as well.
Liz, did you want to add something to this?
No, I actually was going to say myself.
So I actually want to disagree with Isaac on this one. I would say that the cost to you is not the differentiator to the value on the other side. If on the other side it helps them, they will value it and will be willing to pay for it. And regardless if it costs you or not. I would say, and just to this whole thing and finding, and I do want to finding more revenue streams, and I want to generalize Diana's question. It's very easy to speak of arts, but there are many nonprofits out there that are not in the arts, but still their mission is not like an easy, oh, COVID-19 is like perfect for them. No, they're like left way out of this and they're not in the arts. I don't have an exact example right now, but I'm sure that there are. I would say, and with half a smile here, find a consultant, reach out to them to help you find a way to monetize your IP or your abilities or your content or anything that you have right now, minus what's going on out there. So if you're not able to go out there and perform outside, figure out ways through online. And Boris here mentioned so many things so quickly, and I hope you're gonna have it on your document with Teachable and like all those kind of things. It might sound like as Chinese at the beginning to a lot of nonprofits because they never thought of monetizing their stuff or their content, this is a great opportunity to go outside of that comfort zone, and you have an advantage as a nonprofit that the people are not necessarily paying 100% for that content. They're paying to sustain your mission and paying in order for you to continue, and they're getting the added value. So it's kind of like you're and that's the storytelling. Figure out a way to tell the story in such a way that people will end up paying you, supporting you, and at the same time, your mission is being accomplished.
So I think you guys are both correct, and it really depends on what content you have and what the value that you could provide to the community is. I do think that right now, everybody should be offering free content as much as possible in order to help everyone, and really with the genuine intention of serving your community. But at the same time, also be looking at, well, what is valuable and perhaps costs us money to produce, whether those two are the same thing. That might affect how much you can charge. But in terms of the for-profit model, for example, absolutely, people don't tend to charge based on the cost of goods. They tend to charge based on the value provided, the benefit provided to people. So do consider it that way as well, especially if you have something unique and absolutely necessary. And don't be shy about wanting to charge more, but also then perhaps offering scaled down versions, right? Because not everybody can afford, especially in your communities, not everybody can afford to pay top dollar for things that are, world-class IP, which Amir used the term before, intellectual property, right? You may have developed systems, you may have developed content, you may have developed ways of doing things that are incredibly valuable to people. And you could have scales where, depending on someone's need, depending on someone's ability to pay, they can participate on different membership levels. So I think you guys are absolutely both right. But rather than saying, go and find a consultant, which, by the way, in the document that we are going to share with you guys, along with the replay of this, all of us, I believe, have offered ways to get in touch with us and are giving away time. So it's not just about, hire any of us, because I don't think any of us are pitching that right now. We're all just trying to help. But rather than on this webinar saying, go find a consultant, let's dig into what are some of the ways that people can find these new opportunities, right? Because even through, let's hope that in a year, maybe a year and a half max, life can resume looking a little bit more like it used to. I think we can all agree that it's never going to be the same as it was. It's a monumental shift in our timeline between what life was like before this pandemic, and what it's going to be like after. So how do we find those new opportunities as all kinds of organizations to continue our missions, perhaps pivot slightly, perhaps expand our missions, whatever it might be, but continue serving communities in line with our missions going forward?
So I want to make 2 points. One is going back to this last point, but that was made by everybody. I think another way that we might want to look at distinguishing between what we provide for free and what we monetize is, you can provide a sample of something, right? So sample performance, but then the more exclusive of a performance you sort of put out there, if it's limited edition or it's longer, whatever, that's what you can actually monetize. It's sort of like how you can provide, an hour of services for something for free, and then if the person wants more customized sort of services, or they want more time with you, then that's what you charge for. So I think we can also look at that. An example I want to share regarding how to find new ways to monetize your IP is with CARE. Do you know the CARE? They're the care package people, the people buying care packages. So they're sort of an international humanitarian relief organization that's sort of rebranding itself right now. But one of the things that they did that was really smart is they started, they've been around for about 7 years. They started a consulting division. So they said, okay, we're going to market. We have all these donors who are supporting us, but we have all this know-how that's actually valuable not only to other nonprofits, right? So those could be our clients. We also have know-how that's valuable to corporations. They're trying to set up CSR and how to engage with nonprofits. And so they created a whole division around that. And so I think those are certain ways, if you're really great at something, you should definitely consider. So for instance, when I worked for Africa Tikkun, when I was the US CEO, we applied for a grant that the grant application required us to actually potentially support other grantees in South Africa around operations management. And the funders saw that that was an area that we were strong in. So it's like really looking at where your assets are internally, whether it's, it may not necessarily be the kind of service you deliver. It could just be that you're great at HR management, or you're really great at digital storytelling, whatever it may be, and look at who needs that, figure out where that market is.
I love that idea, Liz. I think that's a marvelous idea. One thing we discussed in the last session, I think Amir brought it up, and so Amir, I'm going to steal from you a little bit, but I've been working on this as well. This new world is going to require nonprofits to look at things differently. I noticed in 2008, 2009 with the economic crisis, a lot of organizations became very creative in terms of collaborating with more organizations, doing joint grant proposals to foundations. Some of them for their galas were sharing flowers and photographers, things as base as that, but save them money. So I would like to see, and then that seemed to sort of go away as the economy got better and the recession started to diminish. I would like to see a return to that. Concepts about collaboration. Certainly one of the things is shared space. We're all finding that working from home can work beautifully, except this a little while ago for me when my technology went down, but generally it can work beautifully. I would love to see more nonprofits sharing space, sharing technology, renting space where they can rotate when people come in and don't come in. If anything, larger support organizations like even the United Way or Jewish federations or community foundations, I would hope will take a leadership role in bringing various nonprofits to the table to find new methods for working together, reducing expenses, and at the same time also improving services and being more innovative in the way they do it.
Right on, Marion. I want to come back to a couple of the things, and then we want to move on. So first, this idea that Isaac brought up and Marion, you're talking about, where we're now actually seeing each other in our own personal spaces, and we are communicating in new ways. And I know my kids enter a lot of my live sessions and even webinars sometimes. I've met people's kids, I've met their dogs, I've seen where they live. And that is great for bonding in terms of community, which we're going to talk about next, but also bringing it back to what Isaac was saying, it is a very unique access that we have right now, a very different paradigm of connection. And there are two benefits to that. The first is a lot of people give based on personal connection, right? There is, Marion's nodding her head, absolutely, that the better you know someone, the more likely you're going to want to support the work that they do. So that is an opportunity there to, even though you can't see someone, actually get to know them better because you're in a personal space, but also access to artists, access to influential figures. I was speaking, I don't want to reveal the name of the organization, but I was speaking to a fairly large organization here in New York who has some very prominent alumni in their network. And they're trying to figure out a major gifts program. And I suggested a membership system for major gift donors where they have access to some of this alumni. So if you have anyone in your network, and it doesn't have to be someone who went through your program, but anyone in your network who believes and supports that other people would really love to, listen to and maybe ask them questions in a session just like this, perhaps. If someone makes a certain size gift or pledges a certain size amount on an annual basis, or is a member of a certain level, providing access to people that they would want to have access to is a great benefit. But besides just access to someone above them, there's also the social, right? So we're going to talk in a second about within your own organization, but providing access to other people on your own social level that you might want to network with in your community. So if the reason why a lot of people want to work with other people is, again, personal knowledge and trust of the other. So what are those networking opportunities? If many people believe in your specific cause, chances are that's already a good starting point that we have something in common, we have some similar worldviews and values. If you provide a networking roundtable, virtual one, in small groups for us to communicate, that's a great benefit to membership. Or in large groups, I've seen a lot of organizations have their private Facebook page, private Facebook group, I should say, just for members, right? So those are all added value that you could provide that doesn't really cost you a cent, but shows that people support you, people care about your cause, and provides value to them for becoming a member. With that, I want to move into the next section because we're actually just about out of time, and hopefully our attendees here can stay on a little bit longer if they're interested in the remote work culture that we're all now experiencing. So we've been talking about that in a lot of ways it's getting more personal. What about some of the ways that that being virtual is disadvantageous, and how do we overcome those? What are you guys seeing in terms of organizations? And I know, Tracy, you could talk to this because you're a member of, well, a pretty large 200-person, I think you said, organization. What are you guys doing to keep people connected and to keep people on the same page at this time?
Yeah, so Candid has 200 employees roughly, of which I am one. And we've all been working from home for a few weeks now. I guess this is the 4th week in a row that we've all been working remotely. And overall, I have been surprised at how feasible it's been to keep people connected with one another. First of all, much like today's Zoom session, we are all on Zoom meetings together a lot. So we talk to each other quite a bit that way. Slack has also been a pretty helpful tool for keeping people connected, both for the back and forth chats, and the Slack calls have been great for replicating that feeling when someone swings by your desk to pick your brain for 5 minutes. They can now do that through calling you over Slack with a video call that way. However, we've set up ways for people to continue feeling connected to one another. At least once a week, they do these set up water cooler chats where if people have 15 minutes at 3 p.m. on a certain day, they log into a water cooler chat over Zoom. They get randomly paired with someone else from the organization to just catch up on whatever they want. They do weekly guided meditation sessions over Zoom for people who want to be together that way. They do happy hours periodically. So people are able to connect with each other both professionally and personally on a regular basis, so that the physical distance feels like a little bit less than it would be otherwise.
And I think that's really critical, not just for keeping the organization connected, which, by the way, we do have, I'm not sure if I mentioned it clearly, but we do have a document we're going to share with all of you with a whole lot of tools. Slack is a great one, as is Microsoft Teams, has that same kind of functionality, as does Google. The G Suite that a lot of nonprofits are already a part of has the Hangouts and Hangouts Meet feature that you should be taking advantage of because it's free video conferencing if you're already part of the suite. So those are going to be listed in that document. One of the things that I think is missing and goes back to what we were talking about in terms of new program ideas, virtual program ideas, is that ability to connect and spark ideas. Oh, I've been seeing this. Oh, you know what? I've been seeing something similar. Or what if we tried this approach to it? That often happens in the communal areas in an organization or around a lunch table or something like that, that is now temporarily, hopefully only temporarily, but going away. And in some ways might not fully ever come back if we do move to smaller spaces, reduced time for everybody to, reduced need for everybody to be in the office all at the same time. So that's definitely something to consider. The last point that I want to talk about is nonprofits are obviously needing to pivot. They're needing to change. But along with nonprofits, the nonprofit workforce is also needing to change. And this is probably a great time to acquire new skills for various reasons, whether it's serving your own nonprofit or in the event that your nonprofit is downsizing or having to shutter perhaps entirely, which we hope doesn't happen. Liz, do you want to talk a little bit about what people should be doing right now for their own careers?
Absolutely. So this is not the time to Netflix and chill. This is the time for you to get really busy. So if you're looking for a new job, or if your job's not necessarily secure, you're trying to, maybe vie for promotion, it's really a great time to either start sort of upskilling. So those digital skills are really going to be critical. Learning how to tell stories effectively is going to be critical. Another thing that I would suggest is that you really take a look at your LinkedIn profile and kind of do an assessment of where it is, how it's, whether or not you're really marketable. Because if you've been in an organization for a while, you probably haven't really looked at your LinkedIn profile. And so it's really important for you to really kind of update that, perhaps even write some articles or any kind of thought leadership that can help to update and freshen your profile. Another thing I'd also suggest is if you do have any additional bandwidth is volunteering, so that you can keep your skills and everything up to date, and you won't have a gap in your resume. So those are kind of some of the things that I've been recommending to my own students, to my own clients that they do right now. So this is the time where you actually need to get into hyper mode. You need to be really kind of thinking about how to do things differently, how to sort of reinvent yourself. This is a perfect time to reinvent yourself if you need to. So that's what I would recommend to folks.
And in terms of finding the skill sets that people should be interested in, should be concerned with, I know, Isaac, you had been talking about how organizations can help each other out with complementary skills and services. And certainly that's, I'd love for you to talk about that, but certainly that's also one way to identify, oh, our organization and other organizations are really needing this, and maybe I'm close enough to it that I could level up or pivot into that direction. Isaac, do you want to talk about collaboration at all?
Sure. Well, I do. I want to first also say I'm a parent of 3 kids, and 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Has become a very different stretch of time over this last month. I'm parenting. I'm trying to get my kids through e-school that teachers just figured out what to do with, on the fly, and everyone is struggling to get through and to try and meet a brand new set of challenges that we haven't had before. So I know that there's never a bad time to learn new skills, and there's never a bad time to level up. And certainly in a stressful economy, we want to improve ourselves and make ourselves as attractive as employees as possible. But I also want to put out there that, folks, you got to take care of yourselves. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to learn anything. It's real hard to learn, a new skill with 3 kids draped over you. So that means that the most important skill that you can learn right now is scheduling and patience. Finding where you've got the time in your life to do the things that you need to do, and then giving yourself the right to just do those things and not anything else. So that, I think, is a hugely important thing. We cannot, this is a long-term thing. So it's not a sprint. We got to find a sustainable way to live this way. Excuse me. In terms of collaboration, what that means is that you really need to figure out what you're best at. And that's true as a person, and it's true as an organization. And you need to specialize in those things so that you can continue to gain skills in those areas and deepen what you're best at, and then collaborate. Organizationally, I think what that means is there's a lot of organizations that are really big on service delivery, but have never been great on communications. That's a very common, kind of configuration that we have in the nonprofit space. There are organizations that really struggle with back-end operations, and there are a lot of legacy organizations that are still really strong at that. These are opportunities for smaller organizations to reach out to larger organizations and talk about how do we scale on the operational side. This is a great opportunity for organizations to think about what can be outsourced, where are the areas where we've never been good and we should consider, whether that's outsourcing by hiring other professionals, whether that's outsourcing by reaching out for international staff, or whether that's outsourcing by reaching out to colleagues and saying, hey, we're all sort of down capacity, where can we stick 2 pieces of soap together? But we just need to communicate better. All of us are working remotely. There's nobody who's got the advantage. Nobody has the excuse anymore of, but you don't come into the office and I don't know how that collaboration is going to go, because we're, all of those cards have been shuffled back into the air. So sit down, draw that circle and say, here's who I am, here's what I'm great at, here's what I'm going to focus on, and then draw that circle around it and say, here's what I need to be great, and find the people who can fit in that circle and build those relationships.
And very briefly, I'd like to add, Isaac and Liz, you inspire me, but I think a little bit of Netflix binging is okay too.
Absolutely. Some self-care, whatever that might look like. I've got a jigsaw puzzle that after too much stress, I walk over and spend a little time meditating over my jigsaw puzzle about 15 feet away from me right now. With that, I want to say thank you to all of you and everybody who attended and has stuck around past the hour mark now. Most of our attendees are still on the session, which is indicative of the amount of value that you guys have all provided. Thank you so much. We will be sharing a document, as we've been talking about, with a lot of these strategies and more that we didn't even get to touch on, and a lot of the tools for scheduling, for remote work, for focusing while you're apart, and you don't have anyone else sitting next to you to keep you like in work mode. I know that that's been an issue for me over the years as an entrepreneur. So I hope you guys will all get a lot of value from that. Thank you everybody who attended. Thank you so much to all of you on the panel. And if you have any questions, by the way, all of us have provided contact information on the document that you will get by tomorrow morning. So I hope you get more value of that, and feel free to reach out to us for any additional help.
Boris, can I add one thing?
Sure.
Thank you to you for bringing us all together.
Thank you, Boris.
Thank you, guys. Be well, everybody.
Thanks, Boris.
Everybody be well.
Everybody.
Bye.